All right, little sailing tip for new sailors. So you got a boat, you got a couple of sails with it. And I did a video on sails, and you can watch that, see what you think of it. I know little people coming out and say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about whatsoever. I'm just telling you from my experiences of having a boat that had 7 sails on it, going down to a boat that has 3 sails on it, and being on a boat that had 14 sails on it. I didn't own that boat, but I was like, what do we do with all these things? It's like half of these are never going to be used. So what sail you use, everything like that, that's great. But how do you find out what's efficient? This is a great area. The thing to keep in mind is more sail area is more dangerous, because once you have to get into a sail that's big enough where you have to start using winches to handle it, it becomes dangerous if a big gust of wind comes along and you have too much sail out, you get a knockdown on the boat. Even big heavy boats, a boat like this, let's say this guy here, he's probably out in like 10, under 20 knots of wind, and he's probably fine. But let's say a 50 knot gust hits him, he's going down. He's going to get a knockdown. He's going to have to let out some of that sail, right? He's got lots of sail there. So how do you find out what's efficient? Well, you take each sail that you have. Not just the one that you find is the best compromise. A lot of people will have this one sail up at the head sail and the main are always on there. They have the furlough. It's like, I like the Genoa, but the Genoa is just so big and bulky, and I just don't want to deal with it, and I don't, whatever. Okay, fine. You don't want to be changing head sails all the time. I get that. Some people, well, I don't care about the speed. This will still work within the range of that wind, even if I'm half a knot slower, not slower. I don't care. I'm just, lazy sailing. Okay, fine. But if you take each sail, let's say you use it as a 15 knot, let's say you get a day that's 15 to 20 knots or 25 knots between the gusts and stuff like that. That's a great range to test all your sails. Some sails, you'll bring them out and you'll say, okay, the Genoa, you bring it out, and it's like, whoa, that's too much. That's just way too much. I cannot trim this sail properly and keep the boat upright. Like, you're going to hit, okay, well, I can only point that high with the sail no matter how I trim it. It's too much. It's overpowering the boat, and I've got too much weather helm. I'm fighting with the sails is what I'm doing. So you're going to take that sail down, and you'll mark it down. If it's 15 knots of wind or greater, don't bother with this one. It's just too much work, and you're not getting, the boat's not going as smoothly or as fast as I want. So you go down a sail, and you say, this sail works beautifully in that range, that 15 to 20 knot range. Fantastic. And then the next time you try it, let's say it's 10 to 15 knots. At 10 knots, okay, there's not quite enough out there to get the boat. It works, but it's not giving me the best, it's not giving me what I want. Okay, so this sail's just not quite enough. And then you find one that, well, it works in that 15 to 25 knot range well enough. Okay, that's the sail we're going to keep up on, the head sail we're going to keep up on all the time. And that one gets worn out over time because you never change it, right? But if you really refine it, you could say, let's say you got consistent winds, never mind the gusts so much, but the consistent wind of, say 5 to 10 knots. And you pull out your big Genoa, and it works fine there. So if it's 5 to 10 knot day, that's what's going on the boat. Everything works fine. Which Genoa you pick, depending on, if you want to go upwind a bit more, whatever. And then you get your working sails, and you say, okay, well, this sail's good in this range, this sail's good in this range, this sail's good in this range. And I'm talking about after trim. So then you can really gear it within a 5 knot wind gust to have the right sail up there, which makes life easier because then you're not trying to bleed out some of the sails because you have too much wind in them. Or you're not trying to over-tighten it because you can't get the boat up to speed or point high enough because you just can't get enough in there. Which means you don't wear out your sails as fast when you have the right tool to the job. You can run them somewhere in between, whatever's comfortable, or if you're racing. When you're racing, you tend to crank down on things and you go through sails a lot quicker. You crank them to the point where they're just about to blow out on you. And I've seen sails blow out before during race nights and stuff like that. It's got like, you don't hear the sail. All you hear is cha-ching and crying. It's because that was a $1,200 failure. That was a $3,000 failure. You know, that type of thing. Hope somebody's good with the sewing needle. But yeah, picking the right sail and learning what each sail does. Most boats are probably going to come with either 2 sails, 3 sails, or whatever. My Tanzer 22, I had 7 sails on there. That thing was so well rigged. Like, there wasn't a day where I couldn't pick a sail. And I tried them all, and most of the storm jibs and the smaller sails never got used just because the wind was never strong enough on the lower river. But had I had it on the higher river, I probably would have been going like a rocket with, like, you know, the smallest sail I think was 75 square feet or something like that on the head sail. And then I had like a 375 square foot spinnaker. It's like, this thing was just massive. It was like a half a hot air balloon, right? That sucker was, that was interesting. Spinnakering is very, very interesting. It takes a little bit to learn how to do it right there, but once you learn how to do it right, and I never got the spinnaker alone. This boat doesn't have a spinnaker, nor do I really want a spinnaker on this boat for 2 reasons. One thing that you have to keep in mind, if you have a big sail out all the time in heavy weather, is it creates a lot of extra tension on the rigging. Okay, this is another reason why you want to gear your sails properly, because that's what starts to crack the deck. Go look at any Kirby 25, J22, J24, Mirage 24 that's been around for a while. You'll see all the crays and cracks on the deck, especially around the front of the keel. I have not yet seen a Kirby 25 without massive crazing on the hull. That's the boat being so tight under the sail, trimmed so tightly that it actually starts to stress the boat so much that it actually starts to crack things. Most cruising boats don't have that much problem. Most of the stress cracks you get on boats like this, yes, it will stress at the stress points, sure, like where the stays are and stuff like that, or where the mast is, but it's less stress when you balance everything. So it lasts longer. But over time, yeah, the fiberglass dries out and is less elasticy, so to speak, and it will do that. But your sails contribute to that a lot. So this is why picking the proper sail for the proper wind is, to know what it does, test them out, and plus you have fun testing them too. That's why, like I say, if you pick a day where, like, there's putting up your smallest storm jib in a 5-knot wind is probably not going to do anything for you. You'd be lucky if you can keep the boat on course, right? But maybe in 10 knots it will still function, and you can just see how you trim it. Okay, you trim it that way, and it'll do this for you. And then you can mark down your speeds. You can mark down how tight you had to do it. That's the other thing too. A slightly more sail, a little bit, properly trimmed, but a little bit looser, might create less stress on the boat. Whereas a small sail cranked right in might create excessive tension on the boat. So think about it like gearing, but also think about it like that, like a proper RPM for the sail. Just a little discussion. You guys can discuss down below if you think I got things right, got things wrong. But it's just from my experience, what I would do, and I'll just end on this, because I don't want the video to go on too long. My first sailing experience was a disaster. My first sailing experience was with my Tanzer 22. And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have things set up, and it was pretty bad. My second sailing experience with the same Tanzer 22 was brilliant. It was the most amazing thing because somebody taught me how to sail. And I learned a lot of things on that day. And the guy teaching me, he says, okay, hold the tiller. We'll get the main up. He starts showing me what this does and how to, move on. I'm forgetting some of my terminologies. Again, it's been 10 years since I sailed, right? But got that trimmed out. Got the Cunningham trimmed out. Got the clue, anyway, the sails are trimmed. It's flat at the top. The boom vang and the traveler, I got that all set. Pull it in a bit, the boat picks up a bit of speed, and then you pull it in too much, the boat starts to heel more, but then you start to lose speed, you let it out just a bit, and then you find right where the magic marker is of speed, where, okay, well, just the main, we can get up to 5 knots, but now I'm doing this to try to keep the boat into the wind. Let out on the main a bit. Oh, about with my pinky. Pull it in a bit. Okay, a little bit of tension. Perfect. Set it there. Sails set, but also the helm is set. So I'm not trying to keep the thing in the wind, which will eventually, when people are replacing rudder hardware and rudder posts and stuff like that, it's because they got too much weather helm. And then it starts to vibrate, whatever. But as soon as you let off on as soon as the boat will sail without even touching the rudder, okay, it's as efficient as it's going to get. You're going to go the fastest you can. You're going to point the highest you can. And your sails are you're going to basically steer the boat with the sails to put it where you want it and then trim it up. But the boat, if you go like this, okay, how high can this boat go into the wind? Well, with the sails set like this is how high it's going to go into the wind. So let's say your boat max pointing ability is 45 degrees. That's probably a good average for most people. This boat will go to 60 degrees, believe it or not. You could 60 degrees in the wind and still maintain about 4.5 knots. It's unbelievable. But you have to set for it. If I just try to force the boat into that, I'll lose all my speed because I'm bleeding off speed on the rudder when I'm pushing on it. But if I let out my sail a bit and I come up a bit, if I let out too much, I lose my speed. Pull it back in. It starts, oh, there we go. Just like, okay, this is where I want it. Put the helm where I want it. And just, as soon as I don't feel any tension on the rudder, the boat is balanced to go in that direction. So in other words, you can pick where you want to go within the envelope. Like, you can't go directly upwind, we know that. But if you have different sails off of the head sails, some of them go like this, some of them are flat like this. Flat sails can usually point higher, which is great. But you trim your head sail the same way. Next thing you know, both sails are trimmed, you're still on course, and you need nothing but the tiller to just kind of do little corrections once in a while. In other words, you can pretty much sail hands off. And there's no stress on the tiller. There's less stressing on the rigging. And the boat's heeled right where it needs to get the most efficient to have the least amount of drag on it. And that will tell you how fast your boat can go, but that will also tell you a lot of the abilities of your sails and the abilities of your hull. So you'll hit there is sometimes where you could pull on things and whatever and get more speed out of it. And you might have to do that when we're talking racing boats. But we're just talking the average cruising boat. The average cruising boat is really meant less is more. The less you have to mess with things, the faster you go, the more efficient it is. So to find out when your boat's working efficiently, it's when your boat is the least stressed, meaning the least amount of stressing on the rigging to get, if you're running off wind or upwind or whatever, you can do that. Just let the boat kind of sail itself. My Tanzer, I could, if the wind was, say, a beam reach, okay, and I let go of it, the way the keel was and the way the rudder was on that, it would automatically kick into the wind. But depending on where I had the sails trimmed, if I had the sails out a bit more, it would kick there. But brought the sails in a bit more, it would kick in a little higher. And then if it was in too high, it would variable. And you could play around to see, basically adjust the boat by the sails and set your, rather than fighting with a tiller or whatever. A tiller is, that's one nice thing about a tiller over a wheel, is with a tiller, okay, if you have the rudder at midships, you'll know right away on a tiller, but on a wheel you might be a little, and you're adjusting for that. Now, you're going to get a bit of weather veining anyway, or what they call weather helm, to stay on course. So if you go like that, it might, the tiller might not be efficient dead on, because the boat will want to, if it's slightly heeled over, it'll want to do this in the water. Where if it's just a little bit, but again, you set the sails right, the rudder will just naturally find its balance. Unless it's a really twitchy boat with a completely straight rudder, where if you let go of the thing, the boat is just going to go all over the place. Race boats are more finicky, but that just gives you an idea of how to something to try on your boat is see what it'll do by itself. Don't worry about the boat coming around on you too much. Playing spin the boat is something you should learn how to do anyway. The fastest way to turn your boat around is to, if the wind's coming in this way and your sail's like that, point past the wind. That the boat will just it's just going to spin on you. Playing spin the boat can scare the crap out of people when they're not ready for it. You will get tossed around, but and then you let out the sail right away and then you tack really fast, and it's more of an emergency maneuver that you might do for, like, say, a man overboard or something like that. Good to know how to do. Wait till you know how to sail first before you try it. Get somebody to show you. All that stuff. So same with downwind running. jibing and stuff like that. You'll find sometimes jibing or going wing on wing or butterfly or whatever terminology you want can be a little bit tricky to get the boat settled out, because the boat tends to want to, when you're going downwind, it tends to want to do this. So sometimes going straight downwind is never the best. You want to go off so you can get a bit of a heel on there, feel more natural. It feels like the cockpit's trying to throw you over the helm or over the bow. You know what I mean? It's a weird thing, but play around with it. See what the boat will naturally do. That will save you a lot of headaches and probably save you a lot of stress on the boat too, of rigging and stuff like that. So you're not replacing the deck after 3 or 4 years, and you're not blowing out sails because they're just trimmed too tight. So pick the right sail tool for the job, for the right wind, and find out what gives you the most out of that boat. Some boat might need a little more coaxing to go faster, but a lot of the cruising boats are designed to sail themselves. They really are, to be as stress-free as possible. Where race boats, yeah, it's a lot more hands-on. You don't take your hands off of anything, so to speak, because you just definitely don't want to, put the boat, knock down or whatever. But you get the idea. For the average cruise boat, that's what I did it with this. I trimmed my sails, I set looked up my wind vane. Forget the proper name for it, but looked at that, said, okay, I know I can go 45 in the wind. I'll try there. Then I'll try to 50, whatever. And I'd just keep trimming the sails to see how much higher into the wind I could get. And this boat, again, you can, when you have it trimmed up properly, even in like 25, 30 knots of wind, pinky. This boat, yeah. Mind you, I have a boat it's a pretty heavy boat, but it was designed specifically for, heavier weather. This boat, 15 knots, like 10 knots, I don't go out sailing on this boat. It's like, you'll be way behind everybody. It's like this boat needs a lot of wind to get it going good. It's a heavy cruising boat for its size, right? So, plus I've got a skeg rudder, and I got my prop dragging from the inboard, dragging in the water all the time. Even when it's in neutral spinning, that slows you down by probably half a knot. I'm even contemplating putting on an outboard, just so I could fill up that hole. And the inboard's nice, so it's like the difference between power steering and analog steering. But maybe I'll make it just a separate video on that for something for people to consider buying boats under, because everybody wants the inboard until you have to work on them and they're a pain. But the efficiency of it. So anyway, yeah, hopefully you guys understand what I'm getting at, and something for you to go to try. It'll be a while before this boat goes back in the water again. I'm still doing work on it and everything like that, but the point is that the boat will tell you what it can do. If you're just setting up for cruising, it's the least stress you put on the boat, the longer things last. Just something to keep in mind. All right, have yourselves a great day.